the lead judge will, then read the question for you, and then we'll be ready for your presentation.
Thank you, Marcy. Welcome, Wisconsin, to the final top 12 of the We the People competition. We're going to introduce ourselves, as Marcy said, and ask you to introduce yourselves and your teacher. And we're going to ask you about question 1, and we will go from there. My name is Dan Taubman. I'm a senior judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals in Denver, Colorado.
My name is Susan Firestone. I'm a retired patent and trademark attorney in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
And I'm Mike Miles from Birmingham, Alabama. And Marcy, I hope we haven't been being bad. They've sent Rebecca to look after us. And she's making some sign at us with her hands. And so I hope we've been doing good. I hope she's not here to tell us something. Chad, you look remarkably calm. You must figure these guys are pretty good, right? We can't wait to hear them. We can't wait, Your Honor.
Would you like to introduce yourselves and your teacher, please?
Good afternoon. We are Unit 3, juniors from Wauwatosa West, the state champions from Wisconsin. I am Logan Espinoza.
I am Harry Venkat.
And I'm Elijah Lovely.
We're here on behalf of our mentors, teaching assistants, and teacher, Mr. Chad Mateski.
Well, thank you. Welcome. I'm going to read question 1. The right to vote was not expressly included in the U.S. Constitution of 1787. In your opinion, was the implied right to vote in the Constitution sufficient for the creation of a representative democracy? How did the expansion of voting rights affect the evolution of democracy in our country? Please give examples. Which is the greater threat to democracy, disenfranchisement or fraud? Explain your position. You may begin.
Thomas Jefferson stated that we do not have government by the majority. We have a government by the majority who participate. While the value of voting and participation in government has been prevalent since the founding, it took many years to expand the franchise to certain individual groups in our nation. However, voter participation and security have been and continue to be undermined.
The implied right to vote in the Constitution was not sufficient for the creation of our representative democracy. The right to vote was never explicitly stated, but rather implied in various clauses, such as the time, place, and manner clause found in Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1, the manner of elections clause found in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1, and the Republican Guarantee Clause found in Article 4, Section 4, Clause 1.
While these clauses appeared to create a representative democracy, states limited the right to vote to those who deemed to have sufficient stake in society, which at that time meant only white landowning property owners. Georgia's state constitution of 1776 proclaimed all male white inhabitants of age of 21 years and possessed of his own right of 10 pounds value shall have the right to vote.
By limiting suffrage to a specific group of people, the government did not derive its power from the consent of all of its constituents, therefore violating the social contract as it failed to represent certain minority groups that also held a sufficient stake in society. We have, over time, expanded the franchise and therefore have more perfectly realized a legitimate representative democracy.
The expansion of voting rights affected the evolution of democracy in a positive way. Andrew Jackson, a leader of the Jacksonian Democrats, pioneered the expansion of voting by eliminating property requirements, which was an ideal nearly every state would adopt by 1856.
The ratification of the 15th Amendment was intended to enfranchise all men, regardless of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, which was later enforced and bolstered through the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
By the end of 1965, 250,000 new African American voters were registered, furthering our democracy. The 19th Amendment allowed women to vote, leading to legislation more supportive of women, such as the Shepherd-Towner Maternity and Infancy Act, which lowered the infant mortality rate by 21%.
The Snyder Act of 1924 granted Native American citizenship, which, in tandem with the 14th Amendment, extended them the franchise. The National Voter Registration Act of 1993 provided voters with easier access to the fundamental practice of voting. Both acts furthered John Locke's theory of consent of the governed by allowing Native Americans and those with disabilities to express their consent.
Hypothetically, disenfranchisement and voter fraud are equally dangerous to a democracy. However, in practice, disenfranchisement has proven to be a greater problem in America. The disenfranchisement of African American voters through poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses during the Jim Crow era prevented many people from exercising rights guaranteed to them by the 15th Amendment.
Shelby County v. Holder ruled federal preclearance is outdated and therefore paved the road for future disenfranchisement practices by the states. Voter ID requirements, ruled constitutional in Crawford v. Marion County, disenfranchised 11% of eligible voting age Americans, according to Citizens Without Proof, a survey published by the Brennan Center.
Voter fraud, while not proven to be a major problem in our current system, is still a threat to our democracy. In the last 30 years, elections in North Carolina, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania have been invalidated because of fraud. If this happened nationwide, it would become a problem to our democracy and would have the potential to be as detrimental to voting as disenfranchisement.
While the constitutional framework of federalism greatly impacted the ability to vote, the founders created flexibility for future generations. As we move our nation forward, the right to vote will be the consequential factor in keeping our country's democracy and its founding principles alive. Thank you. This concludes our statement. We are now ready for follow-up.
Thanks for your opening statement. I'd like to start by asking you about what cases the Supreme Court has decided in the area of gerrymandering and how that has, how those cases have affected our ability to attain a representative democracy.
Reynolds v. Sims, is decided by the U.S. Supreme Court, upheld the principle of one person, one vote, which stated that one person, even if they are put in a district, still retains their one vote, furthering our representative democracy.
In the case Rucho v. Common Cause, it was decided that political gerrymandering would be done a political question. I align myself with the majority decision as I see no better solution to our current gerrymandering processes.
Our representative democracy was upheld in the case Westbury v. Sanders, which upheld one person, one vote, in finding that one of North Carolina's congressional districts had 2 to 3 times the population of the surrounding districts, and therefore hindered the people in that district, those people's votes.
On the other side of gerrymandering, in Shaw v. Reno, racial gerrymandering was ruled unconstitutional and segregatory.
We have, right now, I'm going to go a little bit afield a bit. We have, certainly in my state of Indiana, where a lot of people are registered to vote, but they don't bother to show polls. Do you have any explanation of why that might be, or if that's even a problem, how you'd solve it?
This is a problem, as many people who live under the poverty line, 30% of people are not allowed to go vote because they work multiple jobs. So one solution to this would be to have a federal holiday, such as in Australia, where everyone has the day off to go and vote for the federal or even state elections.
Many people just do not like the candidates, and that's why they don't go out to vote. According to Pew Research, in the 2016 election, 25% of voters didn't turn out because of and cited a dislike of the candidates. And one way we could solve this is mandatory voting. However, we would need to include an option to that where the person wasn't voting for any of the candidates. Otherwise, it would be compelled speech and would violate the First Amendment.
Duverger's law and our winner-takes-all system has played a major part in this, and this can be seen in New York, where Bronx Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won her representative seat with just 9% voter turnout, showing that since Bronx is heavily a liberal-sided area of New York, people who might believe in other or would support other representatives would not believe their vote would influence because of the high Democratic population in the area.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a painful answer you gave a minute ago, but I'm afraid inaccurate. When I think it was Will Rogers that said he tells all his friends not to go vote, it just encourages them. And I'm afraid that there's more truth to that than not. I'm sad to say sometimes it probably applies to me. So the Constitution gave you and me guaranteed right that you and I would be protected, equal protection under the law, equal protection for all citizens under the law. But they let the states set the standard for voting, where in Alabama, a convicted felon, even after he served his or her term, can never vote. But in Wisconsin, I think they can after they've served their term. Georgia has same-day voting. Mississippi does not. So when the federal government leaves to the states the right to decide who has an easier time voting and who has a harder time, has the Constitution broken its promise to those individuals whose voting rights are diminished?
I believe the Constitution has not broken its promise, as with the enforcement clause under the 15th Amendment. Congress has enacted legislation such as the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to protect people if their voting rights are impeded on by states. And this could be seen throughout the Jim Crow era, where because of the Compromise of 1877, Jim Crow laws were established, allowing for poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses to be enacted against African Americans.
Additionally, because of the decision in Shelby County v. Holder, it is Congress's fault as the decision as the Supreme Court allowed the Congress to pass a more updated version of federal pre-clearance, but because they haven't been able to do this, this is why so many of the states have different ways to vote or different restrictions to who can vote.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
So switching gears a little bit, can you tell us why you think the framers did not include an express provision for a right to vote in the Constitution or in the Bill of Rights?
James Madison argued against giving or enfranchising people in the Constitution, as he was afraid that if every common individual in America could vote, it would lead to tyranny of the majority, and the majority would thwart the Constitution as well as the rights in the Bill of Rights.
Furthermore, following the tyrannical government of the British rule after this Revolutionary War, the founders were afraid of the federal government infringing on these rights. So they left it up to the states to retain some of their sovereignty and the idea of federalism for the states to determine who could vote. For example, New Jersey's 1776 state constitution in section 4 allowed all free men who have worth of 50 pounds or more to be able to vote.
I believe that the founders did not, or the framers did not include express right of voting in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, as they believed it's a privilege. I align myself with that belief because voting can be taken away as quickly as it can be given, seen with the court case Richardson v. Ramirez, which allowed felons to be taken away their right to vote as they had broken the social contract with the government.
However, I believe that the federal government or that the founders should have put the right to vote in the Bill of Rights, as they may not have seen the states as the tyrannical people. However, throughout history and the Jim Crow era, such as the Mississippi Plan, the states have really become, through the Jim Crow era, those tyrants. And through the Mississippi Plan, they instilled literacy tests, poll taxes, and grandfather clauses on African Americans.
Are there any advantages for gerrymandering? And if so, what are they?
I believe that gerrymandering has an advantage as it does give the ruling party some power to express their representation. And this can be seen in that in our own home state, Wisconsin, where Republicans were in power of the state legislature, drew maps that benefited them in the next outcome of the legislation, holding their power in the state legislature.
I believe that gerrymandering only benefits the party in power, as they're the ones that are able to draw the lines and accept them. So to solve this, I believe that we should instill independent redistricting committees, as they are nonpartisan committees that will draw district lines.
Thank you.
A lot of people think that non-citizens wanting to vote is an issue only in southern states and the eastern seaboard, but there you sit where you can look out your window and see Canada, figuratively speaking. New York has given non-citizens the right to vote in local elections. Is that an okay idea with you? And if it is, should it only be in local elections, or could it be in state elections or even federal elections?
I believe it is okay to have it in local elections, and this can be seen through California's Proposition N, which does allow illegal immigrants and their parents to vote in school board election, as their children do go to school and have a say and need to have a say in the representation of the school board.
Furthermore, because of the decisions in Troxel v. Granville, which established the substantive right to parent, and Filer v. Doe that established that immigrant children still have the right to education, it shows that illegal immigrant parents or immigrant parents that aren't citizens should still be able to vote in school board elections because their children go to the school.
Non-citizens should not be able to vote, as we have a clear process to become a citizen. And so if they want to vote, they should become a citizen and go through that process in order to obtain a sufficient stake in society.
The legislation that ruled illegal immigrants cannot vote is the IIR-IRA of 1996. And I believe by repealing this piece of legislation, we can be given illegal immigrants the right to vote in federal elections.
Thank you. That's a good answer.
Do you think that that the voting age should be lowered to 16 to allow more people to vote?
I do agree that the voting age should be lowered to 16. As a study by Cornell University showed that 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds have just as much political knowledge as their 21-year-old counterparts. And so this shows that they're very educated and should have the right to vote.
I believe that 16-year-olds, but not 16-year-olds, but 17-year-olds should attain the right to vote. As in US Code 10, Section 246, it states that all 17-year-old able-bodied males can be drafted into state militias. And I believe there is no better sufficient stake in our country than be ready to put your life on the line for our country.
Time.
So,
Okay, thank you and congratulations. We'll let the judges give you some feedback right now.
well, I'd like to congratulate you. I was going to say you hit the trifecta, but it's like the quadrifecta, because you cited the Shelby County case, which Mike likes because he's from Alabama. You cited Crawford v. Marion County, which Susan likes because she's from Indiana. And you cited independent redistricting commissions, which I like because Colorado has one. But you get the quadrifecta because you also cited a Cornell study, and I am an alumnus of Cornell. So I don't know if you planned
Chad, you
that.
hadn't lost your touch, man.
I don't know if you planned it that way, but you hit all the right highlights. But seriously, I think you had a lot of good points in your presentation. I liked your mentioning of Andrew Jackson, and that during his term that the requirements for owning property were eliminated. I liked your mention of the Snyder Act as a way of providing enfranchisement for Native Americans. That was very good. When I asked you about gerrymandering, you cited Reynolds v. Sims, Rucha, and the Reno case, which are all important cases on the different aspects of gerrymandering. And when Susan asked about lowering the right to vote, the one you had some good suggestions, but I would have liked to have seen you mention mail-in voting, which Colorado and various other states have as a way of increasing the percentage of people voting. And as I mentioned before, I was glad to see you mention independent redistricting commissions, but you might have mentioned that there are, I believe, 5 or 6 states now that have independent redistricting commissions. But overall, I thought you did a really good job. You were full of information, citation of both historical examples and court cases. So a job well done.
I too enjoyed your presentation. I especially liked the strong introduction with that Thomas Jefferson quote.
Yeah.
That government by the majority who participate. And then you went from there to saying, but it's not sufficient to be implied, and you took us step by step through the not only answers to the question, but actually through the history coming from then to now. I liked your answers on the gerrymandering. I threw you for the loop because there are some positives to gerrymandering, but they aren't always the best sounding ones. And you certainly hit it on the head when the majority who can control the legislative districts or the various districts, the majority party can certainly gerrymander to make sure that they have the most votes, or they win the most elections. And that is certainly true. But another odd thing is that you can gerrymander into having a minority majority districts as well. And that sometimes proves to be constitutional, sometimes, depending on how it's done. But it has also increased on occasion where people in say Congress because of that. But then, so there are some positives, but not many, because most of the negatives outweigh the positives. You did a nice job. I said I like to throw people for a loop. I enjoyed it, and it was a job well done. Thank you.
Susan, you're 100% right about what you're talking about there. In Alabama, we have a 23% Black population, but only 1 of 7 members of Congress are Black. And what they did was they packed her district 88% Black, 86%, and it pulled out all the Black vote from surrounding districts. So we got a Black member of Congress, but it didn't. I think they might give that one back if they could redraw the map and not have that happening. I appreciate it. Well, first, I'm going to tell you real quick, Judge Talbot is being modest. The commission in Colorado that you brought up that he referred to, he's a member of that commission. So he was being modest when he mentioned it. He's on
No,
that.
I'm not a member of the commission. I was a part of a panel that
drew
chose
the
the members of the commission.
Yeah, which is really more important than being on the commission because you pick the members. That's the key thing. That's right. I know about that. Who picks the committee runs the committee. Yeah. I wonder whether y'all get tired of kicking Wauwatosa East back where they came from over and over and over again. That's got to be getting a little old, doesn't it? Or maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, every time we get here on Monday, we just see West, and that's fine with us. I'm proud of you for doing that. That's pretty good. I got nothing against East. It's just we know who's here. Chad, we've got to invoke Lindsay's name just a minute. Lindsay Draper loves y'all with his whole heart. I hope you know that. And he speaks of you with great love and affection and respect, and we always want to invoke his name. The Shelby v. Holder that Judge Talbot is teasing about, I live 4 miles from the Shelby County line. And this is the 10th unit we've heard today, and so far I've heard Shelby held, and this is not an exaggeration, 16 times, because some of them have mentioned it twice. So I'm all over Shelby v. Holder today, and I was against the ruling to start with, so that's all right. Final thing I want to say is you did a great job. I wish every student in the country, your age or close to it, could have a class on civic education like you have had. And I wish they could have a teacher like Chad to teach them, because I think then the voter turnout would go from 60-something to 80-something in 2 election cycles, probably. And people would do a lot more homework before they went to do it. And we have a lot of respect for him as well. You did him proud today, and you did your school proud today. And Wauwatosa, you just have to go suffer, I guess. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you, judges.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to both the teacher and the students. Just fabulous job.